Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Yes, it's been one of those weeks, really not the greatest at all. Spurs just completely out of sorts. To be honest, when you kind of look at it, 2022 hasn't gone particularly well for Tottenham and Antonio Conte. Obviously, they had that terrific unbeaten start under the Italian in the Premier League. But now, they've had 9 matches in all competitions since the year began, and they've lost 5 of them, I believe it is. The odds would suggest that this weekend's trip to Manchester City, the runaway leaders, would end in a negative result, which would mean, 6 in 10. Let's hope not, though. Let's hope not. I'm not saying that's going to be the case, but yeah. Sorry for the really negative and depressing start to the video, but it's been that kind of week, and I think that's kind of the mood around Tottenham at the moment. It's just a real, a real kind of feeling of, what's gone wrong this week. But on the flip side, you kind of look at it and you think the top 4 spot is still up for grabs. It's just that mad a season because nobody's showing any consistency whatsoever. But at the moment, just Spurs don't look like they're going to get themselves together to grab it. The season could go on in terms of there's no European football. We know Spurs aren't going to be in that anymore. That's definitely gone. The appeal, they dropped and everything. So will the extra training time on the Hotspur away pitches, will that help Conte? Will he be able to organise this team, which at times on Sunday looked utterly bedraggled and all over the place? There's some, there was a very good analysis. I don't often get to watch Match of the Day until quite a while after. And I saw the little clip with Jermaine Genius kind of analysing some of the defending the positions for their goals, Wolverhampton Wanderers. And oh my goodness, that's not Conte defending. That's not a Conte team. And, he needs to work on that. And he needs certain players back, which we'll come to. But that was poor. That was so poor. But, I think that's the most frustrating thing is that Spurs aren't dead and buried. And I know that sounds weird saying that in terms of that's frustrating. It's frustrating because it's almost like they're throwing away a really good opportunity now to kind of get up there. And if they could just put a little run together, they could kind of create some kind of gap. But at the moment, everyone's almost tripping over themselves not to get across the finishing line for that 4th spot. Very weird. Some weird results and But I don't know. Let's actually there's a really good quote. Conte told Sky, essentially, I want to get it right because I think I've got it written down here somewhere. When you lose 2 games in a row at home and a previous game against Chelsea, a team that wants to fight for the Champions League, it's impossible. It's right. It is right. It's not the form of a team that should be getting a top 4 spot. Spurs should not be losing games at home, and this is with no disrespect to Wolves or Southampton, who are both very good teams. Actually both. I thought Southampton played really well in midweek. They were very organised. I felt Wolverhampton Wanderers I don't know why I'm using their full name, Wolves, were very much, they knew what they were doing. Bruno Lage afterwards, Lage was very clear in the way that his tactics were. We knew Spurs would have the 2 in midfield, so we put an extra man in there. And then when they switched, so did we. And in his words, we controlled the ball when we had it. Sorry, we controlled the game with the ball. And then when they switched, we controlled the game without it. I don't make him wrong at all. He was absolutely right. So it's 2 teams that have come there and done a real number on Spurs and known exactly how to, outthink Conte. I'd probably go as far to say. I'm going to moan about certain players as we do this, but I think it's important to kind of also note that, Conte tactically was kind of outthought, especially on Sunday. Yes, of course, Spurs had chances. They did better against Wolves than some other teams have done, but ultimately Wolves didn't have to really get out of first gear, and I think that was the key thing. I asked Conte a couple of questions after the game, and I always say Conte's kind of, a lot of his, it sounds weird to say, but a lot of his truth comes in the pauses, in terms of, he likes to be really honest, and he is, But I always feel that there are moments when he just catches himself from saying something that even he thinks is probably too honest. And I got 2 questions and I got 2 long pauses before both of them. The first one was just purely about the. I just felt there's a lack of confidence out there. There's a lot of players who are rushing things. We saw the clips of Davinson Sanchez just hoofing the ball out rather than passing and being calm. And some of them, especially Harry Winks at times in the first half, just wasn't really. I don't know. He was just worried about what he was going to do with the ball, and he just played some either daft passes or got tackled because he was hesitating too long. And up front as well, confidence was not there at all. So I asked Conte, is that something you can fix, or is that something the players that really only they can fix? And he kind of paused for a long time. I think he wanted to say something a little stronger, but he kind of said something which is true. I must also stress. I think I've said this before, but Conte is such an emotional guy. During matches, you see him act like a complete madman on the sidelines. I think against the Southampton game, he kicked a load of water bottles everywhere. He absolutely goes for it. And he has to have this little time after a match where he kind of goes away and almost decompresses before he comes out and talks to the media. Because if he just went straight from the final whistle into his media duties, he would say some rather emotional stuff, and he doesn't want to say that. And I think that pause is also a reflection of that. So his response to my question about the confidence and whether it was something he or the players could do, he was quite honest. This is a bit like story time with Alistair Gold, so apologies, but it was quite a long and it's a good answer. And as I always say, I know I waffle on a lot in these videos, but I think it's quite important if we've got the words of the man who really is in the know, the man in charge, Conte. I kind of want to let him talk, and then we can talk about what he says. So about the confidence. The confidence and pressure is part of our job. The pressure for me, the pressure for the players. I think this type of situation is part of our job. If you remember, when I spoke about improving many aspects, it wasn't only today after 2 defeats in a row at home I tell you a different situation. I continue to tell you the same things. This is a long road, a long path in front of us. Long. It's important for us not to be scared to face this path. For sure, there are many aspects to improve. It's difficult today to speak about the game because for me, in my opinion, the game was good. The performance was also good. We created many chances against a team with the second best defence after Manchester City. Despite this, we created many chances to score. We had the possession. But we're talking about a 2-0 defeat against Wolverhampton, and for sure, we have to improve and to live with a lack of confidence because it can happen. It can happen. We have to be good to live with the pressure, otherwise it'll be difficult. But I repeat, these players are very good. The commitment is very high every day in the training sessions and also in the game because I can't speak about bad commitment. They pushed until the end and I'm proud of this. However, there are many aspects if you want to be competitive to fight for important decisions you have to consider. We have a long path in front of us to follow. I think Antonio Conte is trying to tell us there's a long path. All managers say that. All managers want time. All managers want patience. And that's understandable. We're going to talk about patience a little bit later because I felt he maybe said some things that I think has slightly upset Spurs fans. And I can understand why they're upset as well. But we'll come to that a little bit later. I think the biggest thing for me that kind of annoyed me was that it was another game where I just felt Spurs were so passive. There wasn't this tenacity. There wasn't this real hunger. I see a lot of challenges where the players are kind of... You've probably, anyone that's played Sunday League or even just football, just five-a-side will have seen these challenges where someone just kind of hangs a limp leg in for a challenge. It's like those handshakes you get from people where they kind of just shove their hand into your hand. It's not like a real proper handshake. It's a bit like, oh, okay. You can't really be bothered. And I saw a few tackles like that. There was ones where they were just trying to nick the ball away rather than actually going in there full-blooded and trying to win the tackle. And it wasn't, it was midfield. I saw a few of those. I saw it in the defence, up front as well, when the pressing really should be there. And, if even one of the world's best coaches can't get that out of them, I just really worry about the mentality of some of these players as well. And I think that's probably what has annoyed every manager that's come in. And you've got different players. Is that a scouting error? Is that, not seeing this mentality in players as well? That, when the chips are down and they have to fight, they don't bring that fight. Even up front, I was really disappointed with the 3 forwards. I say 3. I want to temper that slightly. I mean, Lucas Moura, he didn't have a great game. He's a funny one. He obviously was really decisive in terms of important in both goals against Southampton in midweek, but probably it's fair to say didn't make much of an impact other than that. And then on Sunday, he just kind of got into that old habit that kind of has wound people up in the past of running past a couple of players and you think, hello, and he just runs straight into a third person and gives the ball away. His pass success rate was not great again. He didn't contribute too much at all. Sonny was an interesting one. Sonny was trying to make things happen, but again, when I talk about confidence, I kind of feel that with him, that he's just lacking in it at the moment. He scored a goal on Wednesday night as well. It was a really good finish from Lucas's cross. It was very, clinical. But Sunday, there was a good opportunity earlier in the first half after the goals when Bentancur put him through, clean on goal. In the past, we did seen Sonny just run straight through and slot it past the goalkeeper. On Sunday, kind of almost let everyone catch up. And then he cut inside and he hit this really weak shot that kind of rolled into the keeper's arms. Sonny's a funny one. There was one moment late in the game when he absolutely turned on the afterburners and just tore past people. And it was just whoa, like, why is that speed not there every time? Because if he used that speed when he comes up to a player, he will destroy them every time. And I just wonder whether there's a fear of the hamstring, whether he's just slightly worried about tweaking it or doing anything to it again. But yeah, I just saw that pace. I was like, I kind of forgot how fast Sonny is. It really was. It was an incredible burst of pace. And I think it led to a kind of half chance in the box. But yeah, it just wasn't enough from him, and we know how class Sonny is. It's not a question of how good he is at all. It was just a question of, I think, confidence with him. And then obviously Harry Kane in the middle of both of them. He was having one of those games when you just kind of feel like in his head he's looking around thinking, looking around the whole team and just thinking, I'm still here with this lot. And I know that sounds really harsh, but it was one of those games where it was just like no one else is doing it, and he was trying his best. He was going. He was, a lot of their attacking quality was kind of coming from things he did, but on the flip side, he was also trying to do too much. There was moments when he was just trying to run past about 5 players, and he wanted to be on the end of some of the balls he was putting into the box, and it was one of those performances where you can't really have too much of a go at him because he was trying and he was trying to make things happen, but he was almost trying too hard because he just didn't trust sometimes giving the ball away to other people who he just weren't on the same level quality-wise. And, and that's not to say it's like people like Son, because obviously Son and him have had a wonderful partnership, and if there's anyone on that team he probably does trust, it's Sonny. But just, I think maybe some of the overlapping players, the wing-backs and the midfielders, and this felt like one of those games where I do think he just kind of thought, oh, wow, But, it was about the desire for me. And I know that's such a kind of a cliche thing to say. There were tactical issues, of course there were, and there were defending problems with organisation. But I think everything with a Conte system begins with that aggression and tenacity. And, I've said it a million times and I'll repeat it again, especially after the weekend's match, but they miss Oliver Skipp. They do. And I think the fact that they miss a 21-year-old speaks volumes about some of the senior players in the squad. If a 21-year-old who's only had one, first real full season as a Premier League kind of regular, and they're relying on him that much, I think to add impetus to midfield, that's one thing that should be a bare basic minimum requirement for any footballer, is that hunger and that aggression and that tenacity. And Skippy brings that. He does. He just kind of recycles the ball quickly. He launches into challenges. He reads the ball well. He anticipates. When he's in that midfield, you can't really accuse Spurs too much of just giving up. He just won't allow it. Whatever I say, whatever my thoughts and opinions, the numbers are there with Skippy. I've got them here. So when he's been in the starting lineup for Premier League matches this season, Spurs have won 10 times, drawn once, and lost just 3. Without him in the starting lineup, they've won only once, drawn twice, and lost 5 games. That says it all. There was another stat, I think Match of the Day pulled it out, something about When Skip, Dyer and Højbjerg have all started, Spurs haven't conceded a single goal in the Premier League. And when they haven't, I think it was something like this, conceded 13 goals in the Premier League in less matches. It does. I just find that just mind-blowing. I know, obviously, it also indicates that Conte hasn't had his first-choice players to work with. And I don't know when we're going to get Skippy back at the moment. He had that groin injury, and then I was told, I think I reported it a fair few days back, that he'd had a little problem with an infection in it as well, which wasn't happening. An infection during his recovery. So whether we're going to see him against City, I think it looks a bit doubtful. And, Conte's gutted. He really is. He really sees him as an important player. I asked him out in a press conference, not the last one, maybe the one before that, and he was very much like, I've been pushing the medical department and I want him back. He's an important player. And as again, it says a lot. 21-year-old. A top 4 team, if that's what Tottenham have ambitions of being, should not be reliant on hoping a 21-year-old comes back into the team. They should have a good enough quality to be able to see that out. And this is from one of the president of the Oliver Skip fan club. And I still don't think they should be reliant on him at this stage in his career. The midfield it's not settled without him. It isn't. He took Højbjerg out. It's the first time Højbjerg hasn't played a Premier League game when he's been available. Sorry, it's the first time he hasn't started a Premier League game when he's been available to play. Did Harry Winks and Rodrigo Bentancur do enough to suggest that they should be a partnership going forward? Probably not. Conte praised them both after the game. He did. He actually pointed towards the confidence thing, and he said, Bentancur is someone who isn't going to be put off by the pressure because, you have to eat pressure for breakfast at Juventus because it's huge. If we think Spurs and playing in that big stadium with all the fans is pressure, playing for Juventus is something altogether different. And he said that, Bentancur, that's not an issue for him. And he also praised Winks, and he said both of them had a really good game. I think that's a stretch, if I'm completely honest. I've seen some people saying, he's just being nice. He's got these players for the rest of the season. He's just going to be nice to them because he can't upset them. I don't think so, because I think you can also motivate by saying, they will know that they can give me more and stuff like that. I think he did genuinely believe they did. I don't think they were as horrific as some people are making out. I think Winks had a very bad or very difficult first half. Certainly first 20 minutes. There were some really sloppy moments from him, which probably you won't have seen if you were just watching the highlights of the match today. There were a few moments when he didn't even trap the ball properly and it would run past him. And it was very unlike him. That's probably one of the things he is actually quite good at is trapping the ball and being able to use it. But yeah, there was a few times it ran under his foot. Yes, he loses possession. And there were a couple of times he did that as well. I'm starting to feel with Harry Winks, he's far... I mean, to be fair, most midfielders are, but I do feel that he's far more comfortable when Spurs have possession, and then I think he uses the ball pretty well, and he can be quite a progressive midfielder when Tottenham are in a game where they have more of the possession. When he's under pressure and he's being pressed, I think that's when we maybe see the worst traits of Harry Winks, the lack of thought, the rushed things he does. When he has a little bit of time to think about it, he can do some really good stuff with the ball. I think we've seen that under Conte, some really good balls through to the players in the attacking positions. And I think maybe Southampton, he was quite integral in one of those goals as well. It's gone out of my head. I'm trying to put bad things out of my head at the moment. But yeah, I'd say after Spurs had an extra man in midfield, suddenly I think Winks looked a bit better, and he had quite a decent... I'd actually go as far to say he had a decent second half, but unfortunately, first 20 minutes was so poor. That's kind of what he's going to be defined on. Bentancur, bit of a mixed bag. We've said this a million times. Those in Italy say that he will pick up lots of yellow cards and he will give the ball away occasionally in silly places. He did both of those on Sunday. He's had 2 yellow cards in 3 games now, and there was one moment, I can't remember who it was for. I think it might have been... I can't remember. But he gave the ball away right on the edge of his own area. I think the situation was rescued, but it was one of those where you're like, ooh, But he also did some good things, like that ball to Son, like I said. He's better when being pressed. He makes better decisions, other than that one moment I've said. But on the whole, he does use the ball better when he's under pressure. And he's got that little bit of extra aggression for him. Winks, for me, Winks is a bit strange when it comes to being aggressive. Sometimes he can put in really crunching tackles, and we see him do it. Sometimes he will be a bit, like I said earlier, that kind of hang a leg in kind of tackle, rather than really going in strong. Maybe it's an injury-related thing in terms of a fear about injuries. I always remember Poch saying that he had to learn to play with an ankle injury, Winks, which he kind of was always going to be there with him his career, unless that's something I don't know. But yeah, he's very inconsistent in terms of the aggression in his performances. And yeah, it's just two of them didn't work. I don't think Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who's become a bit of a scapegoat in recent weeks, was sitting there on that bench thinking, oh no, I'm not going to get back into this team. I think he was probably thinking, hello? I can see, if you think that I shouldn't be in this 11 and these two should, I do wonder whether in the future we eventually see a Skip and Bentancur partnership tried at some point. I think... How do I put it? I think maybe the 3 is the way to go. It's ironic as well, because I asked Conte in the press conference before the game where he saw Bentancur's best position as being, and he said in a 2. He said he can play in a 3, but I think it's better suited to a 2. However, when you've got managers coming out after the game and saying, we know they just play with a 2 in midfield, so we stick an extra man in. It's like, does a 3-5-2 then automatically come a better choice? It's funny, I do see on social media, it's one of those little beautiful contradictions that social media throws up. So many people didn't want a 3-5-2 in the early stages because they were losing attacking play, and it was always so boring and negative. And now, maybe, I don't know, but I'd probably offer a hazard a guess that a fair few of those same people are now saying, playing 3-5-2, we're better with a 3-5-2. And yeah, I think there's got to be a temptation to use it. I do. I think Bentancur I can kind of see operating better in it, even though Conte says he's better in a 2. And like I said, I think Winks operates better in it as well. But there is a reliance then on the person who's not the anchor man of the 3, the 2 players that, let's say if Winks were to play the anchorman role, it would be an important for, let's say Skip's still injured, for Højbjerg and Bentancur to then be progressive with the ball. I think we've seen Bentancur can do it. Højbjerg's a bit of a mixed bag. Sometimes he'll do it, sometimes against Southampton he had a bad day. He was his passing radar was absolutely off. There were some absolute stinkers that were really upsetting Conte as well. Conte was going mad with some of the balls that he was playing. They were just going straight to Southampton players. So they'd have to be a lot better than that. I think the key with the 3-4-3 and sacrificing that man maybe in the middle is that the 2 number 10s behind, let's say it is Harry Kane, are going to have to work back as well. They're going to have to provide at times another body in the midfield. And there's also a real reliance on the fullbacks to provide the width as well, to kind of almost like bypass the midfield and get behind that extra kind of man in midfield and then be dangerous. And obviously, we certainly can't say that Tottenham's fullbacks are doing anything at the moment at all. And that kind of, I think a lot of the system is falling apart right now in that. It's not just the midfield, though. You look at the defence, and the defence itself, it was not great. It really was not great at all. I asked Conte kind of, I don't like to ask about missing players. It's not really one I like to ask about because ultimately it's the manager's decision to make, the starting 11 and they kind of live and die by those starting 11s. But there was just one thing I just felt was a bit inconsistent in what he'd been saying, in that I asked about Joe Rodon, because I asked him about Joe Rodon a few weeks back and he said very clearly he is Eric Dyer's backup and he will play when Eric Dyer isn't available. Eric Dyer has not been available for the past month or so. Joe Rodon has not played. Look, Joe Rodon has had injury issues. He, in an accidental collision in training just over a month, about 6 weeks ago, he cracked a rib and fractured some cartilage in his ribs as well. So he was in a lot of pain. That's why he didn't play a couple of the early games. He came in against Morecambe, kind of playing through the pain, and then, as luck would have it, which kind of sums up the unfortunate nature of his time at Tottenham so far, went up for an early aerial challenge with a big striker up front from Morecambe, whose name is completely gone out of my head, and cracked a rib on the other side of his rib cage. So, if anyone noticed, I think I said this at the time, he was kind of running in a slightly strange, restrained way. And that's because he was playing with 2 fractured ribs, one on either side, and two cracked ribs, one on either side, and fractured cartilage. And he was, as someone I once dived on a piece of grass, not realising there was a brick in that grass to try and save a ball. And I'm never normally a goalkeeper, I'm shocking at it. And yeah, the bit of brick that was underneath the grass went right the corner, went straight into my rib. So I know from her first-hand experience how painful rib injuries can be. So to play through, and he kept making himself available. And I don't think it's been so much of an issue for him in recent weeks. I think he's managing the pain. So he could have played. He could have. There's been, and I've said in the past, that back three is not looking settled at all at the moment in terms of the nature of it and where people are playing. So I asked Conte about it. Another long pause. And then he replied, with Joe, we're talking about a really good guy. We're talking about a person whose commitment is very high every day. But in this moment, and he paused again, he said, yeah, maybe I make a mistake to pick different players. Maybe. But my evaluation is to try to put out on the pitch the best players at the moment. If I didn't do this, it means that maybe I did it with different considerations. And he stopped for a minute, and then he went, and it looked like he was going to keep going. And so I was like, waiting, and then he just suddenly stopped. He went, yeah. And it was like, oh, okay, there's nothing. So clearly there was something else he wanted to say, but he kind of retracted it himself mid-sentence. There's 2 ways of taking his Rodon comments. One way is that he was trying to be a polite way of just saying, I don't really rate him. That the whole maybe I've made a mistake thing was just offering up a kind of polite solution. And, he did also say, maybe I was trying to put the best players on the pitch, perhaps suggesting that he doesn't think that Joe Rodon is one of his best players. The other way to look at it is that he was genuinely saying, maybe you're right, Alistair Gold. Maybe I've made a mistake. Maybe some bloke sitting on his sofa has said something that this multiple title winner hasn't thought of. I'd suggest that's not the case because, quite frankly, who am I? My gut tells me maybe leans towards the other way. Oh, but it wouldn't be the worst thing now if he throws him against Man City and he has a really difficult game because Spurs are rubbish. And at the end of the press conference after the match, he just looks at me and goes, see, got what you wanted, didn't you, Gold? So, oh my God. But yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think so. Because I think that kind of the window of opportunity for Joe Rodon is probably already Closed because I think Eric Dyer will probably be back to face Man City. And I do feel for him. I think he's been a lot of extenuating factors when he has played. It's been in a bit like Brian Hill. He's often playing when it's a really messed up, reshuffled team that hasn't looked particularly good, and the back line he's been trying to cover for other people's mistakes. Like I say, Morecambe, similar. Andy was playing with a lot of pain. But, you look at that back three that's currently playing, and, Conte likes Davinson Sanchez. He likes him a lot. He just feels that there's that little bit of concentration is the thing stopping him from being a top player. But he was bad. It was bad on Sunday. And I'm someone that doesn't join in the Davinson Sanchez bandwagon pylon because I do, same as Conte, I've always said that. I think he's got all the attributes to be a top defender. It's just the mental thing that does it. But he was making some really sloppy errors on Sunday. I mean, you've probably all seen the moment when, a bit like I was saying about Winks, he just let the ball run away from him and it created a chance that, luckily for Spurs, Jimenez, I think Davies made a good kind of sliding tackle to hold him up and then Lloris saved at his feet. And yeah, Sanchez was just a bit all over the place. He it's just not a unit. I think that's the big thing. You've got Christian Romero, who is he's a quality defender. He really is. He's not a leader, though. He's not an organiser. He very much, and this may be just because he's only 23. It may be the fact that he's concentrating on his own game. He's got this aggressive front foot style which works 99% of the time, but he's concentrating on what he's doing and he's not looking left and right to see what everyone else is doing so much. And you've got Ben Davies, who he made a mistake for the second goal, just handed it straight back to Wolves. But I would also say, despite, about 28 years old, he's an experienced head, but probably not a leader. I don't see him as an organiser in that back line. And this is where I miss Eric Dyer. I think Jermaine Gina said something on the Match of the Day, which is absolutely spot on, is that Eric Dyer's stock has never been higher because of his absence. That's the weird thing about it. Because he is a talker, he's an organiser, and they've really shown that without him they haven't looked as good. I can only go back to that stat. Without Skip, Højbjerg and Dyer, with Skip, Højbjerg and Dyer all starting Premier League matches, Spurs have not conceded a single goal. Says it all. And yeah, they do miss him. They do. They don't gel. There's no one really kind of telling them where to go. And even behind them, Hugo Lloris had a bit of a mare himself. First goal was... it was a weird one. Ball comes in, has a shot, which he palms straight back into the kind of main 6-yard area, which is unlike... Top goalkeepers don't do that. And he doesn't normally do that, but he did, palmed it straight back in. Then, he kind of got a second chance, because it was I think it was Dendoncker had like a half-hearted volley thing that bounced up. And, I'm no goalkeeper whatsoever. I'm absolutely shocking whenever I have to go in 5-a-side. But even for me, it looked like he had the time and the opportunity to either hold the ball, like to catch it, even just with one hand, to kind of push it up and then catch it at the second attempt. But he didn't. He did this kind of really weak punch that went straight to Jimenez. And then, to be fair to him, at that point, why in the world Wolves' top scorer was standing there in the box with enough time and space with no one around him to then just chest the ball down and volley it back? It's beyond me. But yeah, that was an error. And then he did a weird... something that he does do occasionally. He just had a simple pass on to Ben Davies and he kind of miscued it and sliced it, so Davies had to go back. Davies then, of course... Guesty and I, my colleague, we had a slight differing views on this. I felt that, yes, Lloris made the mistake with the back pass, but I actually felt that Davies' hoof to a Wolves player was the most crucial bit of the thing. He felt it started with Lloris, which could well be. Well, he did, I guess. But I felt that Davies' kind of hoof straight to a Wolves person in loads of space caused a real problem. And then you see that graphic that's gone out on social media, and I think Match of the Day used it, where you had this clump of Tottenham players, 3 centre-backs, and there's just swathe of space that the Wolves players had to operate in. And, again, we talk about being switched on, we talk about tenacity, because as soon as the shot hit, I think it was Sanchez, then Bentancur, and it rebounded onto the post and back, they were just standing around going like, oh no! And Dendoncker just ran straight through the middle and just clattered it into the net. And Sanchez is like beating the ground in frustration. You kind of think, well, none of you didn't stand up and react quickly. You didn't get up. And how is he also being allowed to run through untracked? It was really poor defending. And it's everything that Conte will hate, because, he's all about the defence. The only thing I would say that I was a little bit like, about, was that after that, not long after, Hugo Lloris caught a cross in his box, and there was this really big, ironic cheer from the Spurs fans, and it was like, "Ooh." I didn't like that. I don't particularly. I'm not that fussed about booing. If people want to boo, kind of thing, and show their frustration, that's fair enough. You pay the money, but I kind of felt like this is Hugo Lloris, who a couple of weeks ago everyone was absolutely ecstatic about, who's just signed a new contract. He's the club captain. I don't see the benefit of him getting jeered, ironically cheered when he catches a ball, what that can do to anyone. I mean, I think it's probably, fortunately, I think Lloris, he is one of those that maybe doesn't lose his confidence based on that sort of stuff. He's a World Cup winner. He's played in some huge games. And actually, yeah, he made a fair few really good saves after that. But I just kind of felt, was that really necessary? And who does that benefit? I know it's a frustration thing. And some people have told me since that differing reasons for why it happened, and maybe it's not as cut and dried as I thought, but it just didn't sound right. I just kind of heard it. I was like, oh, really? Yeah, I wasn't a huge fan of that at all. But, again, I know how frustrated the fans were. It's just frustrated writing about it all. The wing backs, poor again. Matt Doherty this was a chance. This was a chance to show that he's got more than Emerson Royale going forward. Barely did anything. Wing back, he's playing in his natural role. We got to see probably the two most natural wing backs playing against Wolves. Did very little, Matt Doherty, in terms of anything that was real note. Ryan Sessegnon, similar. He had a little good moment in like the first minute when he did a nice turn and it set up Spurs having a chance straight off the bat, which didn't end up coming to anything. But would I say that he really did enough in those 28 minutes to justify staying on? Probably not. Nelson Semedo was there to be attacked and he didn't really do that. He played it quite safe a lot of the time. He had that very sad, dejected walk that he had to do when Kulusevski replaced him. Just this kind of slow. I mean, he was doing the right thing, getting off on the other side of the pitch so Kulusevski could come straight on and impact the game. And he had that awkward walk where, you get the fans applauding you, thinking, whatever, I've been subbed after 28 minutes, I don't care. Although I'm sure he was appreciative of it deep down. And then he got back to dugout and Conte had a few words, spoke about it. Clearly, it was a tactical decision. And if you're switching to a back four, he was always going to go with Davies, the kind of safer pair of hands who can also come inside and make a three. But yeah, neither. A bit like Chelsea. Yes, Chelsea, they were playing as wingers, but again, Sessegnon and Doherty not doing anything really, which is a shame. Different players, different times in their career. Doherty 30 now, Sessegnon 21, so he's obviously got a lot to learn and improve on, but neither will be happy with what they did. I spoke about the boos, and I get it. I'm not saying I'm someone that's ever booed myself. It's all a bit pantomime, but I get it. I get the frustration. They came at half time, the boos. They were there at full time. I should say I don't know whether it's just me being cynical, but I have noticed that after defeats, they ramp up that music in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium over the stadium system, the speaker system. I don't know what it is. Some random music. It's obviously not. Not the happy Tottenham music that we normally get when the Spurs go marching on and all that sort of stuff. It is some poppy stuff. But they ran that up so high. And the cynical side of me wonders, is that to stop people airing their frustrations and chants, maybe against Daniel Levy or Enoch or the board or whatever. I could be wrong, and it could just be that that's what they like to do. But the cynical journalist side of me does wonder whether that's the case, and it means it doesn't really go down until they have to do the media interviews, which is pretty much always after the bulk of the fans have left the stadium. Could be wrong, but the frustrations about the backing for Conte, Daniel Levy, even Paratici's getting a lot of it now. They're not far from the surface for a lot of fans. Paratici, he's lost his man. He's Steve Hitchin, who used to be the man you could see him kind of how do I put it? Like, I can't remember what the expression is. Talking the ear off of Steve Hitchin through every game as he's kind of talking this and that. That he's now been replaced by Pierluigi Gallini, who, let's be honest, has got nothing better to do because he's not playing matches. He just sits there and has to listen to him. Absolutely, it looks like he's just moaning about everything and every player. Very Italian kind of emotive style where you can see him down there going for it. And I think this is the problem. It's like Conte, after the game, spoke about the fans having patience. And he also kind of touched upon almost providing a more positive atmosphere in the stadium. And this is where I think the problem lies, is that I agree with him that he is definitely starting a new process. He's only been there, 3 months and a bit or so. But asking Tottenham fans for patience with what they've been served up in the last few years is a very difficult ask. You know, they've watched this club lurch from one bad decision to the next. They've been served up some terrible football under some of the managers. Although someone told me on Sunday, that was worse than anything Nuno ever served up. So, no, it wasn't. Unfortunately, towards the end of the Nuno, Spurs weren't even creating chances. Whereas, I think they created 17 chances on Sunday, about 7 on target or so. They were creating chances. Kane had a good one when he ran through. That one with Son ran through as well. Romero had a header late on. I wouldn't say they absolutely tested Jose Sarr to the limit, but they were creating chances. But still, my original point, it's very difficult to ask this fan base who essentially been slapped around a fair bit to then have a bit more patience and take a few more slaps. I suppose if anyone can, it is Conte, although I'm already seeing the dissenting voices on social media kind of about his tactics and his team selections, and certainly when he comes out after the game and praises certain players that others have been moaning about. It's quite interesting to see how back Conte maybe doesn't apply, wholeheartedly. I see a lot of people using back Conte when it comes to the club, but maybe not themselves so much when they're judging what Conte does, which is very interesting. And I think it's football fandom. We've all done it. We all kind of contradict ourselves. I do it all the time myself. But let me read you out the things that Conte said about the fans and the patience and everything. So this is what he told Sky. He said, "We have to fight and try to build something important to improve the situation, but it's important to know the situation because otherwise maybe our fans could be disappointed and instead they have to try and push us and stay behind us. These players need to feel the right atmosphere and not pressure about a target at this moment you can't think. This is my evaluation." Almost sounds like the Mandalorian there. This is the way. But yeah, it's like, I get what he's saying, and it can be very negative in that stadium at times because they're so frustrated, and that kind of feeds into this whole thing. I kind of feel about the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium that it just hasn't become a fortress for Spurs at all yet. I do think it will happen, but when you compare it to that final season at White Hart Lane with the emotion and adrenaline, that no team went there and took away 3 points. They just couldn't do it. And even at Wembley, Spurs started off with a bit of a stutter, but actually, towards the end, it became quite a difficult place for most teams to go to. Spurs did make it their home, but they just haven't done that at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium yet. The atmosphere is mixed. There's some days when it's brilliant atmosphere. It's so noisy. There's other days when I'm sure the every game fans will say, there's day trippers here, tourists, people like that. And I get where they're coming from. There are times when you feel it's a bit like... like they say of La Liga fans sometimes with the top clubs there, that they're waiting to be entertained rather than trying to push the team. And Tottenham are a team that they do need to be pushed. But on the flip side, there's got to be something coming the other way. And when your team are serving up some rubbish, it's very difficult to get yourself in a positive kind of mindset. Where's the rest of that quote? Because... that was it. He said that to Sky, and then he went to the press conference. He kind of expanded on it a little bit more because he was asked whether he was worried that there was a lack of a winning mentality like he's got among his squad. And he says, "The problem is you cannot buy the winning mentality. You transfer it day by day, and it is not sure that day by day because there are players that are more open and they understand the process quickly, and there are other players that need more time to understand it. Winning mentality, in my opinion, means you play. When you play, I am ready to kill you and to live." I think I get what he means there. I don't know what he's ready to kill them. I think maybe the player. It's like, I am ready to, essentially do or die. I think that's what he's saying. And I'm the one who will be not dying today. I will be fighting for everything, scrapping for it. Kind of talking with the player's voice there. He says, "This is the difference in every duel, every second ball, every set piece. When you show better desire than your opponent, when you understand the defeats have to hurt you a lot, not a little." Yeah, so that's exactly what it means. "This is not simple. When I say that we are working a lot to try and improve in many aspects, after when we lost against Mura, Then I said we had to work a lot and maybe we had to try to improve because there are a lot of situations to improve. In my opinion, compare the past and compare the season when this team reached the final of the Champions League, a lot of things have changed. Now, in this moment, we have to be realistic and we have to be together. Also with our fans. Our fans have to understand that maybe you need to have patience to wait to rebuild again the situation they were used to in the past. Now the situation has changed, but not only with me. In 3 months and a half, it was the same with the other coaches in the past. If we have patience and we want to work, this is the situation. You know, again, I can kind of only say, he went on very slightly. He said, we're working very hard with the players, with the commitment. There's a great commitment, but it is not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. I repeat that if we want to be competitive, we have to wait and build step by step, step by step. It's important to be realistic and speak very clearly. I like to do this. This is not the first time I'm telling you these things. This is not the first time. He likes to repeat, does Conte. We get a lot of that, and when I have to transcribe, get a lot of sentences where he likes to hammer home his points. But yeah, it's, Conte with his CV and all the recent success he's had, he's a man that does deserve to be listened to. I do think he is. He's coming to a club that, has not had success. One trophy in 20 years is appalling for a team with the history of Tottenham. This is a team that was the first team to do the double. First British team to win a European trophy. They've got FA Cups galore they've won. This is a team that has won plenty in the past, and they are mocked for the last 20 years, and unfortunately it's correctly so, because they haven't followed up on what they used to be. Under Daniel Levy's tenure, the ENIC ownership, whatever you want to call it. And when someone like Conte comes in, you kind of have to listen to him because he knows what it is to. He is a winner. He's a born winner. He's a player that won everything. He's a manager that's won everything, almost everything as a manager. I think he's won the Champions League, has he? As a manager. And you listen to him, but even he looks ground down. It's like the Tottenham Hotspur experience has already slapped Antonio Conte in the face. There's if there's anyone you listen to, it is him. But it's also on him as well too. He has to try to bring that kind of mentality into the camp, that aggressiveness, that mean edge that he's talking about, the thing he wants his players to do and have, because ultimately, if the players aren't showing that, ship them out and bring in a younger player that will. We talk about Oliver Skipp being only 21 and coming in, but actually showing that hunger and desire. If need be, if it's like a situation just to get him to the summer when the rebuild can properly happen in the transfer market and Spurs can change their squad, do it. If it means bringing in someone like Harvey White into situations, do it. I don't know if what you may be losing in terms of experience and perhaps by someone's perception, a quality level, what you're gaining in hunger and desire, maybe you balance up. I don't know. It's just me kind of spitballing there. But, as I say, that top four spot, even fifth spot, just to improve on last season, it's all there. It just needs full weeks on the training ground. It needs Conte to work with his players. It needs him to transfer what he can bring to them. Because this season shouldn't be a write-off. It'll be so annoying if they're going to write off this season purely because of this crunch summer that myself and others keep talking about. It doesn't mean you should write off this summer. So, it's really frustrating. Obviously, going to the Etihad Stadium is not where you want to go when your confidence is low. Because even when they're not playing well, they're winning games. And that's what Tottenham are really failing to do right now. When they're not playing well, they should still be showing that base level of what they can do, and they're not. Before I head off on that whingy note, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the loan players, because I keep getting people asking me about the loan roundup. So for this week, if you weren't aware, Tanguy Ndombele, yes, he played very well against Nice. It was L'Equipe, who are very tough in their player ratings, gave him an 8. He came and did very well. I think he got an assist for their second goal. Played well. It's one of those where you're going to see a lot of, like I said before, probably you're going to get a lot of YouTube highlights of Tanguy doing Tanguy things. You've got to temper it with the fact that the French league is a with no disrespect intended, it is a lower quality league. It is. It's got a lot of good players in it, certainly, and it produces some very good teams, but strength-wise, it's not as strong as the Premier League. And it kind of, Tongi's gone back to where he was. That's what he's had to do, and he will boss it in matches. For him, I think now it's about bossing it in every match, or consistently at least, and that's the crucial next step for him. But anyway, he did well, which is great. Giovanni Lo Celso also had a very good game. He played against Real Madrid. Villarreal drew 0-0. And I'm looking up some of the stuff. I didn't see it, but I looked up some of the stats about it, and I think it was Who Scored had him as Villarreal's top-rated outfield player. Did a lot of good had a lot of key passes and a few shots and goals. Playing as like a support striker in a 4-4-2, which is something that we never saw him do at Tottenham. But yeah, he played well. Who else do we have? Brian Hill, he's still doing very well. They're raving about him at Valencia. All the Valencia fans they're actually pinning all their hopes on him now. And I think he was as great. He'd played in the Copa del Rey in midweek, so only came on, I think, at half-time at the weekend in a game that I think Alaves were leading Valencia at half-time. And he did okay, but overall, they're raving about him. Honestly, there's a lot of head-scratching in Spain. It's like, why have Spurs let him go? What is this? It's like one of the best young players in Spain. Hopefully, he continues to improve and also physically works on that side of his game, gets stronger so that he comes back and Conte can't say... Conte said some good things about him, but he also said he's just clearly not really physically built for the Premier League. But he can change that. He's only 21. He can easily bulk himself up a little bit for that. Who else? Papiss Cisse is back at Metz. If you weren't aware, he just won the Africa Cup of Nations with Senegal, which is a cracking thing for him at such a young age, and turned 19 a few months back. He didn't have a massive role for Senegal, but he did come on for about, I think it was 12 minutes of the semi-final, and he did very well in that. At Metz, he came back, and I think they used him off the bench because he'd just come back. He got about 20, 25 minutes or so. He's had a good season of development, is the best way to describe it for him. He has started, I think, about 17 of his League Earned games. I think he's come off the bench in about 6. Played in a lot of different positions. It's all experience and development for him for when he comes back to Tottenham. When he comes to Tottenham in the summer. So, yeah, keep an eye on him. He's playing a Mets team that is struggling. They're right down there at the bottom of Ligue 1, so don't expect him to, be doing these incredible things and then winning every game. For him, it's about more mentally. Technically, he's very talented. He's got all of that. He's considered one of the brightest young talents in Ligue 1. For now, it's about mental side of things. I think being involved in a bit of a relegation scrap is a good thing mentally for his mental fortitude, and that will serve him well. A lot of people say that he adapted very quickly. He only joined them, I think it was in 2020. I think it was quite recently. He only joined them and came across from Senegal. So if he can adapt that quickly to English football, then, I think we'll see him come on quite quickly. Who else we got? Cameron CarterVickers still doing very well for Celtic. People mock Cameron CarterVickers. He is probably Spurs' best loan product this season. He's smashing it. He's getting rave reviews, and they've got an option to buy, and I think they probably will, which means Spurs will get a bit of money for him, and I think he'll be a very good player for him. Jack Clark's had another couple of starts for Sunderland, so that's good for his game time. Troy Parrott, another couple of starts from MK Dons. That's all you want for young players, and then it's for them to kind of push on with that game time. Who else we got? Troy Parrott actually got a really good review. I always try and look at the local papers, player ratings and things like that, to see what those who are actually watching them closely say about them. And I think it's the MK Citizen had a really good review of Parrott's performance at the weekend. So that's good. It's not always about goal scoring for strikers. It can be about the rest of their performance as well. And he got good reviews. Niall John has gone to Charlton. He played, I think, an under-23s match for them, and he was on the bench for the first time at the weekend. Unused, but he's only very young. Was he 18? So this is about him getting his first experience of senior football, really, and getting some game time. Keon Atete is doing superbly. If you weren't aware, Keon, big lad, about 6'3", 20 years old. striker. Spent the first half of the season at Northampton. Did very well, especially towards the end. You could see him coming on leaps and bounds. He was getting goals and assists. Got a hamstring injury. Came back to Spurs and it was decided, you know what? He's actually outgrown League Two football already. Let's call him back. Let's get him out to a League One team. So he's gone to Cheltenham. First 5 games, he's got 2 assists in those 5 games. Fans are raving about him. There's some very nice clips of him. He's a big guy, but he's got very good feet. Some really nice bits of skill you'll see. Michael Duff, his manager there, said Keon's come in and he's been excellent. He said that on Saturday after his performance. I'd keep an eye on Keon Etete. He's one who's maybe gone under the radar slightly, but I think I've always kind of felt with him, and I think I've said this in the past, that his physical build, his stature, he's a big guy. It might, if he comes back and he's had a cracking second half of the season at Cheltenham, Conte might have a little look at him in the summer, and he might think, you know what, he's a different kind of option. He's a target man. He's someone that maybe gives me that something that's a little bit different to what Harry Kane does. I'm sure Spurs will try and buy another striker, but to maybe keep him around as another potential one, which maybe frees up Dane Scarlett perhaps to go and have a little bit of a loan season, although I think he's only 17. I think the club would prefer for him to kind of keep learning at Spurs, and he himself's had a good season of experience and development. I think we see these young strikers and we're like, they have to score, they have to go there and they have to score goals, and it's like, no, at that age, it's probably almost just as important to just get kind of the mental side of the game right, and experience and understanding what you have to do up against men as opposed to boys defenders that you were playing against. It's probably an oversimplification, but you know what I mean. And for Keon, I wonder if they'll have a decent look at him. I think to be a big guy, but also to have really good feet, and he is coming on leaps of it. He's really quickly improving. This is not like a gradual improvement. It's like leaps and bounds every week. If he doesn't, Spurs will put him out, I'd imagine, to a championship team, if not more. Keep an eye on Keon Etete. Honestly, he's one that not many fans will probably be raving about or talking about at Tottenham. But my little tip for you there. Goalkeepers, as a couple have gone out in recent weeks after the transfer window. Alfie Whiteman's gone to Degerfors in Sweden. Back to them. He helped keep them up last season, so he's going to have another. I think it's a season with them. Didn't actually look at the terms of the contract. I think it might be a season. And the other young goalkeeper, who I'm absolutely going to murder the pronunciation of his name. I don't think it's Kasper. It's Kakper, Kacper. Technically, I don't know if it's pronounced Kasper. Kurlowitz. He's headed off to non-league Potters Bar Town, who I think are in what used to be called the Ryman. I think it's just the Isthmian Premier Division now, which is just below like the Conference South and North levels. So he's playing. He started the first game for them. He was on the bench at the weekend for them. So good for goalkeepers. It's just about getting experience. That's what it's about as well. I think that's the loan roundup. There's 11 players now out on loan. We won't hear much about Alfie Whiteman for a while because I don't think the Swedish season starts till April. It's all about pre-season friendlies for them now. But otherwise, the other 10 I shall continue to try and give you little updates on. What else? We've got little bits and pieces. Gareth Bale rumours are still there, as always. My journalism career wouldn't be normal if I didn't have Gareth Bale reports to talk about. What I'm told by the club, every person I spoke to within the club, if you haven't seen the reports, are that Gareth Bale has already agreed a deal with Spurs to come at the end of his contract this summer. Everyone within the club that I've spoken to about this says it's absolutely garbage. From my point of view, it's the kind of move I could see Spurs doing, or trying to do at least. If I'm going to be cynical, get back into my cynical frame of mind, from a marketing perspective, bringing Gareth Bale back for a last hurrah in front of full stadium every week or every other week. The marketing, the merchandising, everything, I get it. I think I get why you'd try and do that. So who knows, maybe that is something they do explore. In a football reality, I don't think it works. I think in Conte's system, with wing backs, I don't think it works. I think he'd have to be one of the number 10s behind Kane. And I just don't know physically the demands of what would be required of him in defending as well. I think he'd have maybe a similar scenario to the Mourinho one. And as a free agent, his wages would be huge. Do you want to pay that for a player who Also has injury issues. We know they are. He can't escape from them. He just does every season. I just don't know whether actually balanced up it makes real sense, as much as I loved seeing Gareth Bale back last season. There was the takeover rumours as well. There was a talk of a rejected bid. Again, everyone I've spoken to about that has said it's not true, and there was some people that even suggested for that type of company that had been mentioned, it wasn't actually something that physically they were able to do or something. My kind of thoughts on it. I know there's a fair few people that would love to see Tottenham sold. They're frustrated with Enoch, frustrated Dan Levy, whatever you want to call it. Personally, if you're looking at it from a business point of view, I don't think those types would want to sell the club right now. It doesn't really make sense. You're just coming out of a pandemic. Values aren't at where they could be. There's a lot of, as people are always moaning about, there's a lot of development to be done around the stadium and the training ground that would maximise the value and all that sort of stuff. And obviously there's a lot of NFL stuff to come, I think, as well. And those stadium naming rights eventually. I think as a package to sell, I don't think Tottenham's a plump enough turkey, as it were, to really sell. I think that's still to come. But, every time Daniel Levy is asked about it in like a supporters trust meeting, he always makes it very clear it's not for sale. You ask people at the club, they'll say it's not for sale. Obviously, that's not the be-all and end-all if people say that. Because ultimately, if you offer enough, if it's a silly amount, then everyone's for sale. Everything is for sale. But I just kind of feel like now doesn't feel like the right time. And again, just because people say that rejected bid thing isn't true, that's not to say it isn't. Because, is that something you would disclose either way? I want to make that very clear. I'm not kind of doing down a report or anything. It's just very much that's what I'm being told. I think that's it. It's kind of in terms of housekeeping, just kind of tidying up any last bits there. But I think that's really it. Man City at the weekend. I think I've got to drive up there and back because of the kickoff time and trains aren't great. It's a whole northern run of games right now. I think I've got a few very exotic stayovers to be had at hotels in Burnley and Middlesbrough to come up. Train up to Leeds as well. So, Tottenham haven't been performing at home. Maybe that's what they need, is a few trips on the road to galvanise them. But there you go. Right, I'm going to head off now. Hopefully we've got something more positive to talk about next week. I really hope so. Even just a good performance. Even if it is to be a defeat, a good performance to build on. Tottenham are a bit of a bogey side for Man City. They've had wins there. They've had wins at home. Man City do see them as a team that gives them problems. And with a full week of training, you never know. That's what I'm going to cling on to. That's what I hope for. So, there you go. As always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves, and I shall catch you later. Goodbye.